Let's talk about this gem. Fleetwood Mac, Tusk. I love this record. Came out in 1979. They were huge because of Rumours, had toured behind Rumours and whatnot. But something weird happened after 76, 77. Punk rock, new wave, all that was happening. It affected everybody in the biz. It affected Fleetwood Mac as well. In fact, a lot of people think this album is really a weird album for Fleetwood Mac, and it is if you expected it to be like Rumours. But I thought it was great. And in fact, it was after Rumours and everything, Lindsey Buckingham said he didn't want to do Rumours Part 2 and then Part 3 and then Part 4 like Warner Brothers wanted him to do. He wanted to do something different. And man, did he, because it really pissed a lot of people off. But I have to admit, I think this is the album that really made me fall head over heels, undeniably in love with Christine McVie and her voice. I just think she's awesome on this record. And a weird thing is, if you look at the record, she opens the album and closes it. Amazing. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about this record. Lindsey, like I said, he didn't want to do Rumours again. So he wanted to push the boundaries. I got to back up a little bit from that. The band were still high, literally and figuratively, after Rumours. They've made a lot of money by now. So their excess was, well, unfathomable. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But Mick told the band, okay, let's do a double album, Mick Fleetwood, that is, because everybody was writing so much. Lindsey had become entranced with New Wave, and he wanted to push the boundaries. He was in love with The Clash, the Talking Heads, and Costello. Even Gang of Four, I believe it was, he said he was listening to. You can't really hear any of that in here. Maybe a little bit of a little bit of Costello. No Gang of Four, that's for sure. But it inspired him. And he kind of lost his nut on this. In fact, if you go and look at the pictures inside the album and all the press around it, he had cut all his hair off. Now he had short, kind of messy hair, cut his beard off. He was getting into the mode of things, right? But he was also freaking out, kind of Eno-esque in a way. And I wonder if he wasn't reading about some of oblique strategies. One day, supposedly, Lindsey walked in the studio and said, see where all the knobs are on this desk? Turn them 180 degrees and let's see what happens. The engineer or the producer said also, he kind of freaked out. He would do weird stuff like tape microphones to the studio floor and then get down in a push-up position and sing into those microphones. He was trying to do all kinds of crazy stuff to try different sounds and to get different sounds and to push Fleetwood Mac in a totally new direction. And boy, did he. But let's talk a little bit about some of the songs on here. Well, I love this album cover. I really do. But let's talk about that. Who is this? I've always been fascinated by this dog. Actually, it's the producer's dog, and his name is Scooter. And that's a picture of Scooter biting the producer's leg. Now, Ken Calais is the producer, if I remember right. Peter Beard, if I get this straight, this is going to explain the cover and the name. It is not named after Mick Fleetwood's appendage, as rock and roll lore likes to have it. But if you look at this album, it looks kind of sandy, kind of strange, whatever. I believe the guy's name was Peter Beard they hired to do the photography. Well, Beard started to do the photography, and after like 3 weeks, he vanished. He went to Africa. And while he was in Africa, if you look at these inner sleeves, he got really involved with elephant conservation. So he became a freak about it. And when he would send artwork back to Fleetwood Mac, it would always start to have tusks on it, as you can see. There's all kinds of crazy stuff on here. So at the end of the day, look, a dog again. At the end of the day, they ended up calling the album Tusk. Thing is, whoever had cut a deal with Stevie Nicks promising her she could be on the cover in all her flowing, fantastic gypsy garb. And guess what? Scooter got it. He's the cover star. And supposedly Stevie Nicks was really pissed off about that. But let's talk about what's inside. Crazy stuff. Title track. We know how the album got its name from the artwork from Peter Beard's work. But the song, supposedly, it's a weird song for Fleetwood Mac, right? No one expected that. Supposedly, that was Mick Fleetwood had a little riff he would practice before he would go on stage, a little drum riff. Then he was, I believe it was for his father's funeral or something like that. He was in France and he had a hangover and he's staying in a small French town and there was a marching band outside and they kept marching around the square and it was really getting on his nerves. But he noticed the people who followed the marching band had a great time, but everybody else got really annoyed and he thought, oh man, I'm going to put brass to that riff and we got a track. Ended up going back, hiring Dodger Stadium and the USC marching band. There we have the video. There we have the title track. An example of Lindsey's wanting to push boundaries. Supposedly, the engineer or producer said on the title track, Lindsey and Mick are actually playing a Kleenex box and a lamb chop. How about that? Couple bits here. Unexpected bits, actually. Walk a Thin Line. Nice track, a Lindsey track, if I remember correctly. That was actually inspired by a Charlie Watts drum fill on the song Sway. Now, Stevie Nicks, we all know during Rumours, everybody was sleeping around, trading partners, this and that. She gets around. Sarah was actually a song about a miscarriage she had from a fling with Don Henley. Can you believe it? There's also another track on here, a great song from Stevie Nicks as well, called Beautiful Child. That was actually written, she had been seeing Derek Taylor, who was the Beatles' old road manager. She wrote that about Derek Taylor. Can you believe it? She gets around. And of course, there's other tracks on here that Lindsey wrote about her, but man, they were all over the place. I didn't know it at the time. I was just enjoying it for the music. Was quite debaucherous, like I mentioned earlier. Lots of dope, lots of drinks. They had a huge budget now. And in fact, Christine McVie had said they would drink so much champagne that somebody had commented once, after one night of recording, that the money spent on the champagne and other booze could have basically paid for the whole recording of the album. Which, by the way, this album did break a record in 1979. It cost over $1 million to record. And Lindsey had actually asked Warner Brothers to custom build a studio for him and his new sounds he wanted to make. Warner said no. So they had to rent a studio. And that's one of the reasons why, with all this debauchery and stuff, it cost so much money. But they got some fantastic sounds and pushed it in some weird directions on here. And in fact, it was so debauched, when they went out on the road for this tour, they had two big tents on each side of the stage, two big black tents. One was just for the prima donna known as Stevie Nicks, so she could put on all her chiffon and flowing robes. The other tent was actually a tent for the band to go in and get a little bump, a little bit of help for the show, if you know what I mean. But overall, great record. A lot of people were weirded out by it, by the cover. Where's the band? Why is a dog on there? The music, very strange. But hey, like I said, it was almost the 80s. Things were changing. You can't be stuck in the hippie mode, the West Coast hippie mode all the time, right? Thank God for Fleetwood Mac Tusk. Great album. What do you think?